watching or listening to an Old Man Geek production. Welcome to Blerd Vision, a podcast from the suburban diaspora. When we say welcome, we welcome everyone, and by everyone we mean nerds, blerds, and bleeks, cosplayers, roleplayers, geeks and freaks, Marvel zombies and distinguished competitors, trekkies, Star Warriors, Batmaniacs, and spider fans, warhams, whovians, afols, that's adult fans of Legos, tolkeinites, weeaboos, supernatural hunters, otakus, evageeks, and bro-stars and sis-stars, Pokemon trainers, potterheads, bronies, whovians, browncoats, and scoobies, and all nerd properties in between. This is a show hosted by John and Terrence. We are lifelong geeks who happen to be black, but are certainly nerds first and foremost. The Alpha Geek and the Omega Freak. And you're listening to or watching an Old Man Geek production. Welcome to Blerd Vision.
The way that this is going to break down is that, we're going to mention what we're up to, news, main topic, the Nope or Dope Award, and then we'll wrap it up. So, Terrence, my brother from another mother, what are you up to right now, nerd-wise? Oh, now you're sounding better.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
I don't know what I did.
I don't know what you did either.
I haven't moved.
Oh, you are in the magic spot for your connection.
That means don't move.
Don't move. So what can you repeat that? You're saying Mile High Con?
Yes, my icon was established in 1968. It's a sci-fi literary book convention.
Oh, nice. Did you have anything of your own that you sort of took to sort of pimp your wares to try and sell, try and hawk?
No, I'm still in the scribbling stage yet. I'm not a writer. Still a scribbler.
Still scribbling. Any other geeky things that your freaky mind is up to?
Nothing legal.
Oh, goodness. Who knows how this transmission is being monitored, right?
That's why we're having all the distortions.
Right? I'm thinking, okay, so what am I up to, geek-wise? I did get a few sets that I have to paint of Warhammer. I played Death Guard pretty much. So the Plague Marines. And I kind of realized this today, that it seems as though that's a running motif, because I play Death Guard in Warhammer. I use a lot of poison types in Pokemon, and I listen to more than my fair share of death metal, and my favorite character in Sandman is Death. So I don't know. And I was a sort of a goth new wave kid in the 80s, listening to The Cure and Smiths and Sisters of Mercy. So I don't know. That there may be a running theme, but
I'm thinking so.
Right? Yeah, so I think I got Nurgle that I got to paint, which is going to be fun. I'm trying to think what else. I've been locked in Baldur's Gate on the computer, Baldur's Gate 3 for a bit. I knew as soon as I started playing, hours would go by and I'd be like, oh, that's right. I need to actually do something other than play Baldur's Gate 3. So those are the things that are locking me up at the moment.
Do you eat?
I did eat. Occasionally, I do eat. That's speaking of which, how did you enjoy Colorado's first snowstorm of the season?
I was chilled, not shaken, but chilled.
Shaken, not stirred.
Exactly.
Right. So, yeah, I for all of those BIPOC listeners or viewers out there, take your vitamin D. It is very helpful when it comes to seasonal affect disorder. And we get less vitamin D from the sun. So typically in the winter, that's why we get the winter blues sometimes. Take a vitamin D, or get a sun lamp, but I think one's cheaper than the other.
It's because we all have that hibernating gene.
Right? It's the melanin. It's the melanin. So that's it for that. There is some news we can talk about. Just 5 points, just a handful. There was the one that happened weeks ago where Phyllis Coates, the first Lois Lane, died. She was like
Yes.
96, I believe. And
Yes.
do you have any fond memories of Superman back in the day? The earliest Superman, the George Reeves Superman?
Oh yeah, that's why I ran home from school to see what I got home and what I would watch in the summer. There you go.
I got into quite a bit of trouble watching that show. I remember Superman flying through a window, which was basically him jumping through the window, and catching two bad guys and clanking their heads together. And so I had two friends at school. This is elementary school. I guess it was like second, third grade. And I was like, look what I learned in Superman. And boom, I hit their heads together. I got in quite a bit of trouble. Uh, all the weaknesses of not having a fully developed frontal lobe.
No, let's just say you have very rampant imagination because I got in the same trouble in nursing school. I actually got kicked out of nursing school for biting because of
Um,
vampires.
See, so you were biting people because of vampires. I was clanking heads together because of Superman. It was written in our geek genes early on.
Exactly.
So yeah, I do remember her, and I remember, I think having Lois be this sort of star reporter thing, it made it so that I never thought that women were just sort of, housewives. It was like, oh, she was like sort of one of the earliest career women, if you think about it, in
Oh, definitely.
in
And also
comics and medium.
assertion of will, not lending herself. I mean, yeah, she was the standard 30s and 40s and even 50s woman where she wanted, in the end of the day, somewhere along the line, to have a man, as in her case, Superman. But in her wanting of him, she also branched out into having her own independence to be worthy of him.
Yeah, well, and she was the most worthy of him, actually. She was independent, she was inquisitive, she was sharp. Yeah, she was a damsel in distress, but most of the time she was a damsel in distress trying to, catch a story. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, she didn't need Superman, which is kind of one of the reasons why, outside of when she was in super danger, um, which is, I think, one of the reasons why he was really into her, and
Mm-hmm.
what did you
And
think
that
of?
carries over to our real lives, our mundane lives, if you will. Because if you are a superhero fan, you want a partner in that sense.
Sure, you do. You want someone that's an equal. You don't want somebody that's just, just a face.
Nope.
So it was good. It was good. Um, in terms of, I'm trying to think of what else. In terms of marriage, what do you think about Superman and Lois getting married? Did you like that? Not like that?
I just figured it was another path in a mythology
Hmm.
because Superman is a modern mythology, and so you can have the story where he never has anyone. You can have a story where he does have someone. You have a story where he's just slightly stronger than the average person, and he dies. So
Sure.
it's the same thing. You could have him married. You could have it where he can have a kid. You can have it where he's so alien he can't even think of having a child, or he even has to wind up carrying the child.
Hmm. What do you think about Spider-Man and Mary Jane getting married? That actually leads into another news story. In January, there's going to be a new volume of Ultimate Spider-Man where he's married with children when he gets his powers. And it's written by Jonathan Hickman, who I think is great. Hickman did, excuse me, Hickman did the really good run on Fantastic Four. He did the House of X and the Powers of X, which I thought was really a pretty brilliant reinvention of the whole X mythos. And he came
Mm.
up with the Council of Reeds, where it was all these Reed Richards from across the multiverse, which I
Which
think,
led to the Council of Kings and the Council of Ricks.
yep, sure did. He got ripped off a few times. You're a good comic book writer when you get ripped off a few times. And so far, outside of Alan Moore, I think Jonathan Hickman is getting ripped off quite a bit. But yeah, it's a married Peter Parker. So what were you saying about the whole marriage of, did you have an opinion on that?
I just think it would be good.
I
I
have,
think it would be good because it just adds a new twist. Because they've always had the characters they had for the longest time. I mean, from before we were born to say 30 years ago, the idea of a superhero having a family beyond the Fantastic Four, because they were essentially a family at the beginning, was absurd. But now, as we fans have grown older, they realize that, well, that's not such a bad thing. They all have to have a reason beyond. And I mean, that was the reason why I like, Alan Scott, before they made him gay, as in they did the Earth 2 story in the 52, when he was Earth 2 original Alan Scott, the original Green Lantern. I like it that he was a family man and that his affair was being a superhero. That was his affair.
I don't
how
have
come you
any.
missed it segment plane?
Yeah, I don't have any problems with them changing his sexuality particularly, but you're talking about how initially he was sort of a family guy.
Well, see, that's it. I didn't care that they made the 5200 Earth 2 Green Lantern gay. I couldn't care about that at all. But Alan Scott as a character, the idea that he was a suburban family man and he missed his kid's birthday party to save a plane, and that caused the angst between him and his wife. That was a whole new dynamic that's never been addressed. Because Lois Lane, okay, you had to go save. No, this wife is like, what the hell?
Yeah, what are you doing?
You missed this party. And he's like, well, there were 250 people on the plane. I don't care. What's going to be next week?
Right.
That was a different dynamic that was not allowed to go any further when they went and made him gay. They didn't say they could have made a person named Bob or Terrence. Or you get any idea?
Yeah.
They could have. I don't care about that. It's just that dynamic they shut down when they did that.
Maybe they needed to probably have him be in a family as a gay man. That might have actually kept that sort of piece of it together.
Only if the partner got upset the same way. I wouldn't care.
Yeah. Well, in other news, Attack on Titan, the final chapters, part 2. I guess they just streamed that little bit, so Attack on Titan is finally coming to a close. I don't know how into that particular anime
the idea of being a vitamin. I said the idea of being a vitamin is not too appealing to me.
Being a vitamin? Yeah, I guess because the Titans do tend to do a chomp chomp. That's true. Yeah,
they don't even do a chomp. They just kind of swallow.
Yeah, they kind of swallow. I thought it was great, and then it got really fairly convoluted pretty quickly, which like X-Men level convoluted. Because I was like, okay, wait, and spoilers here. Spoilers, everyone. Spoilers. Them being actually the people fighting the Titans were Titans themselves. I was like, what? Huh? And so that kind of became a bit strange for me, but I do need to catch up on it and finish it up.
Well, see, that's when they change the story and they go down a different path. In the process, they lose their way. I mean, segueing to the X-Men, who are the real X-Men in DC Comics, if you really think about it?
Who are the X-Men?
In DC Comics?
I don't know. Doom Patrol?
Doom Patrol is it by the formula of having a mentor and everything. And then you could say the Titans as far as the the attitude and arrogance to a degree. But to me, I would say it was the original Legion of Superheroes all the way up to about the 80s.
Oh, because yeah.
The powers were always different. That was one of the rules. So you could be a mutant or you could be one of a billion people who have the same power, but you united with them.
And you all had the Legion flight ring.
Exactly.
Which kind of handy. Yeah. I always wanted to get involved with reading the Legion of Superheroes, but the problem with DC, and I think this has always been a problem with DC, is that how to start. It's like, when do you start the whole thing with DC?
Oh, simple. You just choose a milestone. Like in Legion, you choose when Lightning Lad married his girl. That's just it.
You just start there.
You start at a wedding. You start at a child's birth.
a new volume, maybe. But I mean,
Yes, it's a change.
so ladies and gentlemen that are listening or watching, I'm much more of a Marvel zombie, I guess, and you are much more of the distinguished competition, correct?
Uh, a DC head. Let's be
Yes.
honest.
So we're balanced there. Um, so for me, outside of stuff that's post-crisis, um, I don't have a firm handle on a lot of the DC stuff. Like post-crisis, I do, but before crisis, I should say, uh, it's weak. I mean, I've read some Golden Age issues, of course, and I probably read the Raish Agul.
It's pronounced either way. Let's be honest. Two
I've
different
always
ways you can say
I've
it.
always said Raz Agul, but it's Raish Agul.
Like I said, it depends if you're doing the Arabic pronunciation or you're doing the English pronunciation.
Yeah. I guess English. But yeah, so anything post crisis I'm familiar with. Post crisis familiar, like New 52, all the stuff right immediately after the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Yeah, familiar. Before that, little spotty. So the Legion of Superheroes, you say, is sort of the X-Men amalgamation. The
Yes, because
X-Men
it's just
sort
the
of.
wild card, no pun intended, because one of the characters is named Wild Card.
Oh, there you go.
But the wild card of different characters,
Uh-huh.
as in no character is allowed to even have the same powers, even if they think they have the same powers or have a similarity.
Hmm.
Their bases cannot be the same. So you had mutants, you had wild births, and even genetic alterations.
Okay. Well,
Uh, but you see, as Marvel goes or DC goes, is one of those. You look at it, the irritations when they lose the way, story wise. When you look at it, like Peter Parker is always supposed to be the person who had problems. He had too many problems. That's why I didn't like him when I was younger. It's like I
mhm,
got enough of my own. I don't need any.
sure.
But as I get older, I'm like, okay, it's not so bad. It's like more people who are DC are quicker to embrace Marvel than those who are Marvel are quick to embrace DC
Hmm.
in their later years. They're just like, they always the biggest one they like to say is Superman's OP,
Sure.
and they totally forget about the Guardian, who if he determines he can win, he will win.
Hmm.
They forget about Hyperion. They forget about Sentry. They forget about
Sure.
these characters who are ungodly more powerful than Superman.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and all of the sort of Celestials and the Silver Surfer and some of those guys are at that level of power in Marvel. Most of the space guys, Galactus and the Gardener, the Collector, the Watcher, all of
Mm-hmm.
those folks tend to be maybe at the same power level as a Superman. And yeah, I think what was his name? The Guardian from Lilandra's Force in the X-Men. She was like the Imperial Guard, I think is what they were called.
Yeah,
And
the Guardian. That was their Superman. And you're
yeah,
right.
that
That
was
was
there.
him.
He was super powerful. I remember an episode, or not episode, but an issue where he was just, taking shots from Colossus like it was nothing. And so, yeah. Well, that was our news for we spun out a little bit, but yeah, those are the news bits. But let's keep having the conversation because I think that this is the Blerd Vision, and it is about all things geeky. Our actual topic today was just how do we come to geekiness, and you got a little bit of it, and a little bit of geek history in terms of maybe some of the people that are really important figures in the world of BIPOC geekdom. This podcast isn't going to only be about, or exclusively even about, geekdom as it relates to race, but we are geeks that happen to be Black and old. We're old. We're
Older,
plus 50. Older.
older.
Yeah,
Speak
older.
for yourself.
Yes, right. Older. who
I'm not gonna be
remember.
old until it's 3 digits, so I might not make it.
Yes, maybe not. Older. This is true. We remember when comic books marked you as a weirdo. D&D marked you as a weirdo. Warhammer marked you as a weirdo. Sci-fi marked you as a strange person. All of these things were things that you would like that could get you stuffed in a locker. So
If
we
you're
are,
lucky.
if you were lucky. And I know there's a lot of fans out there that like Stranger Things. And the thing about
Which you
Stranger
totally identify with. You
Yeah, I like Stranger
identify with
Things.
my
It's
brother.
fine. But I don't think that the character that happens to be black in that is entirely representative of the geek experience in the 80s for blacks. I think that, we have had discussions about this kind of often that, liking geeky stuff in the 80s and 90s, people would think that you were not black. You were liking white stuff. It's like, why do you
If you're
like that?
lucky.
If you were lucky, why do you like that white stuff? And now you could swing a piece of rope and hit a black person that loves anime. So, but back then when I was watching Robotech and, Manzinger Z and all that stuff and Go Lion and no, that just was not the case. That was not what was happening. And so our history of being black geeks has been fraught, wouldn't you say?
Understatement. But there are ironies. When I
Sure.
lived in Detroit, the first black-owned TV station, Channel 62, their first show they had for kids of all things was Doctor Who with Tom Baker
Oh, nice.
because it was cheap.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I happen to be quite the Doctor Who fan, and what's interesting. Here's an interesting thing that also relates to geekdom and our history of geekdom and the being a person of color. The new Doctor Who is going to be black.
He's going to have our hue.
Yes, he is going to have our hue. I have mixed feelings about it, if only because I don't want anytime they do sort of a different race for a character, you find out that just how racist the fandom can be. And I kind of Doctor Who fans, whovians are like the last bastion of fans that I don't know if there's a ton of racists.
Well, if you want to see something interesting, see, I forgot what her name was, Missy, as in one of the master forms, and the
Uh-huh.
last person to play the master.
Uh-huh.
He was Hindi, and she was, I think she was white with a Latin name.
Hmm.
And they had them at a convention. They were walking up an elevator, and there was no way you first of all, you would have thought they were a couple because not so much that they were, I mean, they're just standing beside each other, but I mean, he has a beard and everything looks totally out of character, is where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what it should be as far as being characters in the game, in the movie, in the shows,
Mm-hmm.
is that the character has nothing to do with who you are, and vice versa. And that should be the same way with race. You know, they
Yeah.
were just trying to play off of the sinisterness. When they did the master, the twirly mustache, except his was a mustache and beard.
So you're the East Indian master, I think, was played by Sasha Dahwan, I believe is the pronunciation.
I believe
I
that is his name.
I did like, and Michelle Gomez was the master before that, and I liked both of them.
Right.
I don't think that they did right by the Doctor, the last iteration of the Doctor that much. I didn't think. I think they sort of, it was short shrift. If that's, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but it didn't seem like they really invested that much into her.
Well, my
The
thing is
the
very
13th
simple.
Doctor, you know.
My thing is like Superman. As you know, that's my jam. But anyway, they had a Superman encyclopedia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was thinking they had a Wonder Woman when they had a Batman one, and they were these thick, almost 400-page books. And I'm
Sure.
going with it is in they have the same possibility because once you look at those books, it's the same opportunity I have with Doctor Who, and that is we don't throw out our trash. We incorporate it differently. In other words, when they did the Timeless Child, and the Master said is actually the Doctor, wouldn't it be interesting? Is that the Time Lords knew what the Master was going to do, and basically he was actually the timeless child.
Hmm.
Because they have established canon that number one, the Doctor's father was a Time Lord
Mm-hmm.
because they did that with the TV movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that his mother was half human. I mean, he was half human because of his mother, and so between those two things alone, they wouldn't have to throw everything out. And it will also go back to the point of when the first Doctor came out that he was from far from the future, and that will explain his mother's connection as why he had to go back to Earth and always has his fondness for Earthlings.
Oh, that actually
And
makes sense because it's always kind of like, why do you always hang out in Britain, Doctor?
exactly,
You know,
you know,
there's a whole planet and there's a whole universe, and he goes specifically to one planet and specifically to one island on that planet.
well, yeah, well, it's the same thing like Japan and the United States. They got that for us, but Japan is actually better than us when they have the Godzilla movies and they say, "Oh my God, it's the end of the world," and there is a American who's white, and then they have some black Africans, and then they even have nowadays, as they get further, they have Hindi and some Spanish. It
Some
is,
yeah,
you know,
some Latinos and Hispanic folks. Yeah.
exactly. So they're trying to branch out versus us. We say it's the end of the world, and it's just still the standard people you see at Burger King.
You know, that just reminds me, I was watching a little blurb. It was Carl Sagan, may space rest his soul. Carl Sagan was one of his complaints about Star Wars is he said that all of the people in Star Wars, they're all sort of Northern European. He didn't see any people of color in Star Wars. So he's talking about the first Star Wars. This is right after the
Right,
first Star Wars. And I was
right.
like, yeah, that is interesting. And it's that, it's I don't have a problem watching media that doesn't have someone that has our shade. That isn't a bother to me. But I do think that from a storytelling perspective, it doesn't completely make sense that in a galaxy that everybody's going to look like that they're from a planet that has mostly Northern European features, because
It,
if you're in the Goldilocks zone, I'm assuming there would be more than a few Africas or Africa type planets if evolution allowed for it, and you would see some maybe darker skinned folk. But
well, you have to go back if you think about it. What if that's the only if you took Europe and you make the exact zone of UK, Europe, Ireland, and just make it like circle the globe and the rest fell in the ocean, then that would be possible on that planet. That's the
maybe
geek moment there.
Yeah,
Sorry,
maybe there's
that's the
yeah,
geek
sure.
moment.
Maybe if you're trying to give them a plausible deniability. But my point with the my point with the 13th Doctor, and it was played by Jodie Whittaker. I just don't think they gave her as much of a chance as they should have. I thought some of the
Well, there's a
episodes.
lot of factors. Number one, BBC. Only reason they kept it around until they linked up with Disney was because of the fans. Because that they know it's kind of like ABC when they got rid of football. There was a lot of protests when ABC got rid of Monday Night Football.
Sure.
And Doctor Who is almost in the same vernacular. But the thing is that BBC realized, like Toho realized with Godzilla, we just stay in our own little lane. We're not gonna make any money. But if we branch out, we will make money. Hence, they didn't give Disney the rights to the Doctor, but they gave them a partnership.
Hmm.
So that's why he's on Disney Plus instead of BBC.
Hmm. Well, however we get it, I always am a fan of more Doctor Who. I've liked I mean, I haven't seen as many Doctors earlier than Baker, but all of the Doctors from Eccleston on, I've watched every single episode multiple times. So I'm a fan. So we'll see how the new Doctor does, but I think they could have maybe had Whitaker, possibly just given it more of a chance because it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of seasons, maybe a season and a half, 2 seasons, maybe total.
Well, that's the way I feel about the Doctor in the TV movie. Truly, I
Mm-hmm.
figure they owe him like a season or two of animation. They don't even have to do a full on series. Just do I don't know, 36 cartoons,
Sure.
hour long each. And that'd be just enough to get his character because he's always been willing to come back. And that's the sad part. And that's where it goes back to what I've said to you before about missed opportunity. You
Hmm.
have a person who's willing and you're saying no, no, no. Getting to your point about him being the first black doctor, that's not quite true.
Oh, that's true. There's the not the war doctor, but there's the woman that played a doctor
That's
that's
right. But there's in that same season, there was another doctor, actually, not that season, the Peter one before, that they had a black doctor.
before Capaldi.
No, Whip Cabaldi. They had a black doctor.
Yes, that was,
Because
yeah, it was the same actress
no,
playing
it was,
that was talking to him.
no, it was Dr. Moon.
Hmm.
Because
I,
they said that was the last Doctor Who's uh, incarnation. In other words, he downloaded his essence to the moon, so River wouldn't be alone.
huh. I need to
And
rewatch those.
that's why and it was played by the guy who plays Zod, who is black
Hmm.
in the Krypton TV series.
Hmm. Well, I think Peter Capaldi, I think it's Peter Capaldi, right? And
Right.
I really, he gets slept on a lot as far as uh, the doctors. Everybody's all about Matt Smith and oh gosh, I can't believe I actually forgot his name.
David.
That David Tennant, yeah, 10th Doctor. Everybody talks about, but I mean, Capaldi did a great job. But I'm going to steer us back to our original concept of the original topic, which was touchstones in Black geekdom, because you had a few folks that you think get ignored in the world of geeks that are people of color.
Well, yeah, because there's first of all you got to understand the culture of it as blacks. The black culture lures more to spirituality of Christianity. You could say it's because of the slavery history or whatever, but you can say that in which case I'm going with Brother John is you could say one of the apocalyptic fantasy movies.
Oh, okay. And so that was a touchstone in Black geekdom.
Yes, it was.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and it just continues with that because it's the same thing about Greg Morris in the Outer Limits episode where he played an engineer, which
Hmm.
again was unheard of during that time period.
Well, and Rod Serling, he actually had always been for civil rights, and I love Rod Serling, love those old Twilight Zones. And I forgot what the episode is. I'm sure people listening are going to be like, "Oh, it's this," but I a huge Twilight Zone fan. I own it all, but there was the one where I believe it was an episode where they lynched a person and the town just gets darker and darker and darker.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the network, the censors, really had a hard time with it. I think they also had a hard time with another one of his episodes, which caused him to actually start the Twilight Zone. But folks that are out there, definitely send us a message on Urban Dharma 8, the number 8, or that'soquantum.net or what's your email, Terrence?
Drakestorm@gmail.com.
Yeah. So those send us a message just to say, oh, it was this, because I'm just totally having a bit of a brain fart at the moment. Um, but, and I think that those are touchstones in geekdom of
Well, you also forgot about William Marshall.
William Marshall. Refresh my memory.
William Marshall was the king of cartoons in Pee Wee Herman, but he also played Blackula, but he also played Daystrom from Star Trek.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There, that's a good one because again, these are folks that sort of get slept on that, because we were talking before that oh, my phone rang. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. But we were talking about how everyone talks about Nichelle Nichols, and we were kind of like, oh yeah, but we have to mention Nichelle Nichols, and we do, because I think that's a really important, to see yourself in the future is important, and that's what I think Martin Luther King was telling her when he said you should stick with this show.
Well, and also what people don't understand is that a lot of times there is inclusion, or how should I say, you know how I am about organic diversity.
Mm-hmm.
but there is, I
Well,
won't say organic or even forced. Where I'm going with this is specifically Hanna-Barbera. That's
mm-hmm.
exactly where I'm going. Hanna-Barbera, when they did the Super Friends,
Mm-hmm.
they had Apache Chief for the Native American or
Sure.
indigenous. They had Black Lightning for
Sure.
the black character. They had Super Samurai for the Japanese character.
Mm-hmm.
And they had only one that had a good name, I think, was the Aztecian, who was basically Mexican.
Okay.
All the other names you could consider racist, or you could consider, well, in other words, they weren't trying to be racist, but they were kind of on that edge,
Well, they were clumsy about it. And I think that maybe you should tell the listeners your view of organic casting. Maybe explain yourself there. Because I know where what you're mentioning. We've kind of been back
Okay,
and forth on that one,
there
but maybe
there's
explain to the
forced
listeners.
diversity. Forced diversity is that we will have a character of a specific sexuality, a specific sex, or a specific race, or even specific beliefs in the storyline in order for us to support it.
Mm-hmm.
Organic is you go home and the character is a person of color, but you can't tell because they're just the right shade that you don't know until you see their mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
And it is truly organic. It's not like the Jeffersons where one child was white and one child was black.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly a blend family or organic, as in like we've discussed before, the Green Lanterns. You can have any sexuality, you can have any history, anything, and be a Green Lantern. You just have to have the will.
Sure.
But a lot of people stumble over that. And then in the getting off the subject just slightly, people don't recognize time period when they get upset about diversity. They don't recognize time period. Why I say that is because I remember of all things Hal Roach, if you remember Hal Roach,
Mm-hmm.
the creator of Little Rascals. One of his last interviews was on, of all things, uh, Jay Leno,
Mm-hmm.
Tonight Show. He was
Mm-hmm.
103.
Oh, wow.
And he was talking about buckwheat.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay Leno was like, he was the most highest paid of the Little Rascal. Yes, he was. He was paid. He was one of the best actors I had. They got upset at me for having a colored person on there. And some people go, what? He said colored, but you're not thinking about this man is 103 years old.
Sure.
And he still had some sort of respect for buckwheat in the first place.
Sure.
So to come down on him is what present society is recognized is wrong to themselves.
Sure. Well, I think that sometimes people get into these circular firing squads when it comes to BIPOC issues, and people of color issues. It's like, you know, I remember there was this gentleman I was speaking to years ago, but this is right around the time when Trump was about to be elected. And he was like, well, what do you think the colored people want? And I was like, well, I joked with him. I said, well, first of all, we don't like to be called colored. It's people of color. But now I could have, totally destroyed the man, but I knew that it was a teachable moment. And I think that the problem that some of our younger brothers and sisters that are people of color or, are LGBTQIA, one of the problems some of these folks have is that they're just quick to really roast a person when it's better sometimes just to teach them and bring them to your side. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Now, it's not about respectability politics or that kind of thing, but it's just about how many enemies do you really want to have? And I prefer
Well, it's
none.
not. Well, it's not just that. Also, it's like, does it worth it? And I
Yes,
mean, that's really is, does it worth it? Because if this person is on the edge of being racist, are you going to push them over to being racist because you got to stand by what you believe?
and that's the thing is I tend to think while there were things that happened with the election of Trump that sort of opened up people sort of waving their intolerance flag high, I do think there was a lot of folks that were just sort of on the fence about things and they saw any number of things that pushed them to one side or another. I think that there was a great groundswell of people that were, supportive after seeing George Floyd, that immediately became not supportive when maybe some riot happened. And I suppose you could question whether there was genuine support there or not. But, those are, I think that, and maybe this comes from our history of geekdom, is that we're typically the only, or not until recently, till last probably 10 years or so, we were typically the only Black person in the room.
Yeah, we
And
were the only raisin in the bag of rice. We were.
sure. So, I mean, I belong to a multiple geek sort of things. I'm a big fan of heavy metal, so I'm typically one of the only people of color there. I like punk and goth music and new wave, so I typically was the only person of color there. Now, when I went to hip hop shows, it wasn't like that, of course, but and then of course comic conventions and sci-fi conventions and gaming conventions, all of those things were things that I typically was alone on. And I think that, after breaking the ice, you get to the geek stuff. Sometimes people don't know how to speak to you or relate to you, and it's just like, no, we're just people and we like the same thing. And you could reach a place of camaraderie by your geekiness and fandom about a particular thing. And then, you could, when stuff came up, you could say, oh, by the way, maybe this was a little racist, or maybe this was a little intolerant. And then, you breadcrumb them to not necessarily being so intolerant.
Yes, it's not it's their intention versus actuality, and that's got to be taken in consideration, which
Sure.
some people do not have the patience to do.
It's true.
And then what they also got to understand is that geekdom is in many ways connection, and
Sure.
and the beauty of it is that you could go to a foreign country and they're literally getting ready to chop off your head, and you can say, "Is that a Superman tattoo?" And go, "Oh, yeah, it is." He's not going to chop off your head, but the next person will, because he don't care. He might like Spider-Man.
Sure. But it's
But
about
that's
making those
connection.
connections. Yeah, it's making those
Exactly.
connections. And,
And
because how many times are you in line at a convention where you're just like, oh, do you like what, such and such a writer is doing with such and such a character? Or, oh, I really liked the Byrne run, but I didn't like the such and such run. Oh, I liked the Miller run, or I liked whatever. I liked All-Star Superman written by Grant Morrison, but I didn't like, whatever else, Ordway doing something, or, and yeah, I mean, and then you have this shared language that is geek culture.
exactly. And sometimes people sit up here and they take it so far out of context, as I've called them before to you, opinion knots, as and they only explore their opinions. They do not care about what is true one way or the other.
Yeah, well, and
And that is a hampering.
I think it's a big hampering. There are a couple of other folks that I wanted to mention in terms of touchstones in specifically Black geekdom, and there's a book called Invisible Men. It's the trailblazing Black artists of comic books. It's by Ken Quattro. And he goes into some really good folks that I didn't know at the time that were Golden Age writers that happened to be Black. There was Matt Baker, Elmer Stoner, Orrin Evans, E. Sims Campbell. I mean, we know about, Dwayne McDuffie and Kyle Baker and Christopher Priest now, but these are old school guys that were drawing. I think Baker, if you get a chance to check out some of his artwork, he would do stuff like those old Sheena Queen of the Jungle Golden Age comic books. And that was Matt Baker. And he was, really talented. And
But
that's definitely a touchstone of BIPOC geekdom that gets overlooked.
We would have to also take into account the time period again. That the reason they're not so much seen is because given we weren't allowed to look at the other side that way during their time period. So, I mean, Sheena is pretty risque for that time period. And we saw what happened with Emmett Till. That would not have gone well if they knew that he was Black.
Well, and I think that maybe even what's interesting is I don't know if he was maybe passing. Ladies and gentlemen that don't know what passing is that there were some times throughout history when light-skinned people of color would pass for being of Northern European descent. Kind of the same thing that some people that were Jewish would do by changing their last name, that kind of thing, so that they could pass, you could pass into white society. I definitely think that if you look at some of the pictures, some of them do look like, they might have been on a lighter shade of black for sure. And maybe because they were behind the scenes, you didn't necessarily know, you just saw a name. Maybe you they didn't know that they were black. I'm gonna have
Well,
to read that book, but yeah, it's Invisible Men: The Trailblazing Black Artists of Comic Books. Ken Quattro, worth
a
checking
lot
out.
of black geeks, we pass ourselves when we talk on the phone. People don't even know who we are sometimes, especially if you don't have a stereotypical black name.
Sure, my name being John, it's like and my last name being Combs, it's like that's a British name. It's not from the African Combs. It's the British.
Exactly.
It's the British. For ladies and gentlemen that do not know, many African Americans, our last name is the last name of the slave owner, and that means Winfrey, Washington, um, James, LeBron James. All of those were, the slave master's last name. But I think them being behind the scenes might have been, and maybe I think that comic books weren't always thought to be, they might have been thought of as lowbrow. Because
Oh, they were.
because you have a lot of folks that happen to be Jewish that were creators in comic books, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby,
They were
so
lowbrow until World War II. Because during World War II, the soldiers over there were ordering the comic books to have a connection to home.
sure.
And so that is what started to make them highbrow, because not so much during the war, but when they came back, they were still looking for them. And then they started realizing, oh my God, you're Stan Lee,
Mhm.
not Stan. Okay,
Well, Stanley Lieber, I believe, is his last name.
exactly.
But
Right.
just a small list of Jewish cartoonists. You have Gene Colan. You have, of course, Art Spiegelman, who wrote Mouse. Al Jaffe, who I love. Snappy answers to stupid questions. We dedicated the first episode of That's So Quantum to him and Mel Brooks. Adam Kubert. Of course. Who else? There's at least a few right there, and of course, Joe Shuster for Superman, and Jerome Siegel. So
Right.
the people that invented the very first superhero, because it's definitely influenced by pulp comics and that kind of thing, but they were our Jewish brothers and sisters. So that is a big piece of geekdom as well, is that piece of the Jewish population, our Jewish brothers and sisters, creating the comics we love.
Correct.
So any other names that you want to name drop for touchstones in geekdom of the non-Northern European persuasion? And that's nothing against all of our Northern European descended brothers and sisters. It's just this particular episode is just about some of these touchstones in Black and BIPOC and LGBTQIA geekdom. And please, ladies and gentlemen, send us any other folks that you think we forgot to our various emails. But anyone,
Clovers.
Scatman Crothers, how is Scatman Crothers part of the geek world?
Who
You
is the
think?
voice of everything in Hanna-Barbera when they need a black character?
That's true. That's true. Hong Kong Phooey.
The Harlem Globetrotters.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Hong Kong Phooey I was into. Man, the
Oh my God,
70s.
Hong Kong Phooey is just oh my God. Oh my
The
God.
70s were such a important in the 70s, martial arts was so important.
Oh yes.
So important. I
And Hong
lost
Kong
that trick.
Phooey was just he was just the epitome. And that was the thing. The one thing that the Hanna-Barbera world never, they were almost in the world of sci-fi because they always had these anamorphic animals walking around, and nobody flinch.
Sure. Sure.
Nobody flinch. We're not talking about Scooby Doo where he is just a dog. I mean, nobody. Huckleberry Hound, uh, Tennessee Tuxedo. Nobody.
Oh,
Flinch.
if so as the main writer for That's So Quantum, the show that we're both in, I know that some people are going to say, oh, you're just ripping off Rick and Morty. It's like, no, I'm ripping
We're going further
off.
back.
We're actually ripping off Peabody and Sherman, which then was in the 1950s, which was ripped off by Doctor Who, which then all of it was ripped off from The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. So
Right.
yeah, Rick and Morty's a few rip-offs down the line, Quantum Leap, all of those things. So that's what made, when you were talking about Tennessee Tuxedo, that reminded me of Peabody and Sherman.
Well, exactly. And I mean, and see, also what most people don't understand in geekdom, we get to see the gentle side of very strong men who hid their strength. What I mean is, I don't know if it's true because you always hear these rumors, right? But Mr. Rogers was like a Navy SEAL. I do know that Don Adams was a Marine DI drill instructor, which totally throws you for a loop. Captain Kangaroo actually saved Lee Marvin's butt quite literally during World War II.
Oh, wow.
So these are things you go, what? Huh? Whoa. Because you see, they did such a flip when they got 40 and 50 versus the others. And like you said about passing, let's talk about reverse passing. Charles Bronson, who's Hungarian, playing Mexican.
Or John Wayne playing Genghis Khan. Actually, that'll lead us to I guess we can wrap up the topic of some touchstone people that you need to remember in geekdom. One of the things I also want to mention, in addition to that book on the invisible blacks from comic book world, is there's a book called Black Nerd Problems, a bunch of essays by William Evans and Omar Holman. Check that out. But our last segment of our first episode, the last segment, is Nope and Dope. Something that we think no way, and something that's like, no, that was pretty good. That was a good thing. So what's your Nope award for this week?
We got so many.
Pick one.
Okay, we'll go with the 2600 Atari Custer's Last Stand Revenge. Custer's Revenge game.
Oh goodness, yes, that's super problematic. Super duper.
We're not even going to describe it. We're just going to give it a name and have you go look it up yourself.
Let's just say it's an X-rated version where Custer's the hero. And
the native woman is the victim.
Yes. So what's your dope? Something that's really good for the week. Geek World.
I'm just saying, Sony saying they're going to stick the disc in their PES systems.
You think that's pretty good? Yeah, that is dope.
Because they said they were going to do that no matter what. And see, what people don't understand, I have said this to you before, that people want to go intangible, stream or winning any others. Well, I like tangible, because tangible, I don't care if going intangible if I have say.
Sure.
But we don't have say. Anybody can jump up and say, well, I have as many as I want. But the moment they decide to remove it, I mean, we could talk about another nope, but there's a question of nope at the same time. We have to kind of wink at it, is Songs of the South. Because there are moments that's just history, and there are moments that should be there, and there are moments you go, yeah. Oh, and I do have another nope. Oh my God, I have a nope.
Okay, so your first nope was Custer's Last Stand. Your second nope was Song of the South.
Oh no, I mean Custer's Revenge, based on
Custer's Revenge. That's right. Yeah, Custer's Revenge. And what's your other nope?
It's a great holiday movie, but God, this one scene just takes away from it. Holiday Inn. Bing Cosby.
That I'm not familiar with. Explain.
He sings a song to honor Abraham Lincoln in blackface.
Oh, goodness gracious.
And
yeah,
all the band members are in blackface.
Yes. Yeah, it's not too much of a geek property or a geek related thing, but yeah, that's a solid no.
No, it's the geek thing from the point of view that the holiday movies come up, and we always, that's the Christmas holiday geekdom, is Holiday Inn, Mariah Carey, all of this Rudolph movies.
Oh yeah, the Rankin and Bass. Is it Rankin and Bass? Yeah,
yes,
those
Rankin and Bass. All of that is a different kind of geekdom. That's Christmas geekdom.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Really
all right.
Is. And Holiday Inn is Christmas geekdom.
All right. Well, on that note, sir, I guess that was our first episode. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been wanting to do this for 3-4 years.
When I had a thinner chin.
Yeah, right. When we were both a lot less gray.
Oh yes, and I had more hair.
Right, you had more hair. So forgive some of our sound quality issues. Forgive some of the interruptions. We'll get the bugs worked out. Thank you for being patient with us. And where can people find you, Terrence? They can email you at drakestorm@gmail.com, right?
Yes, sir.
DRAKESTORM at
Yes,
gmail.com. You can email me at urbandharma8. That's URBANDHARMA, the number 8, at gmail.com. Or you can send me a line at thatsoquantum.net. We'll be premiering our web comedy show, That's So Quantum, November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. I think my dog's calling me, so I'm going to wrap it up. So we'll wrap it up with our signature goodbye that we have been saying for years on the phone, and now you people will be welcome to be exposed. This is our goodbye greeting for all of you and to each other. Don't be a stranger.
Just be strange.
All right. We'll see you in a week.
Same here. No problem.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that was it. Our very first episode of Blerd Vision, a Black Nerd podcast. We really hope that you enjoyed the show. If you want to reach out to us to hype something that you're doing or into, or just have a question or comment, please reach out to us. You can reach Terrence at drakestorm@gmail.com, and you can reach me, John, at urbandharma8@gmail.com or thatsoquantum@gmail.com. Please check out our show, That's So Quantum, which will be on YouTube. And you can also check out, the show that I do with my granddaughter, Convince Me, where she tries to convince me to like or check out something she's into, and I try to do the same. Anyways, again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.